Hello, I'm Kacee Johnson, Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at CPA.com, the business and technology arm of the AI CPA. And today I am here with Lindsay Stevenson, Chief Transformation Officer at BPM. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here with me.
Always, anytime, Kacee. This is my favorite stuff to talk about, so it's always a win.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to drill down into AI a little bit different today and not just talk about what could theoretically come down the pipe with this emerging technology, but instead what you're hearing with your teams and also how you're dealing with it in terms of implementation and change management.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with AI, I think, Kacee, it starts out where it's sort of in that, when you look at the innovation curve and you're trying to figure out where it sits, it's in the exciting phase, right? Like the possibility phase. And so it's almost overwhelming when we start talking about AI because the use cases are almost limitless, which is terrifying. And so then you almost flip the other way where people are like, I'm out because it's too overwhelming. I can't figure out what to do with it. And so we're just going to not do anything. We're going to wait for everybody else to figure it out. So I think for us as a firm where we're living right now is how can we get over the hump of being so overwhelmed with the potential and the possibilities to actually practically applying it to something? So the use case part is important, but really the bigger part is like with any change, how do we filter? How do we prioritize? How do we make sense? And then how do we execute? And those are the same things that we've been doing on every other technology, every other change opportunity for years and years and years, right? So it makes it less scary because it actually goes through the same framework that we would do with anything else we're working on.
So are you finding that what's the general sentiment with your teams? Is it scary? Is it fear of AI? Is it excitement of let me be enabled by this to help my job and I can do more and more fun stuff maybe? Or, what are you hearing?
All the things, right? Like it depends on the day. It depends on like the type, like the use case, right? But we have, you naturally have some people that are innovators and early adopters by their like base operating system. And so those members of our team are like, what's next? How are we going to do this? Like, what else can we do? And then we have people in our teams who've been around the block a lot of times. And they're like, listen, we've seen a lot of technologies and we know there is like a huge kind of wall that we have to get over as a profession of like, how are we going to use this thing? And so they're a little bit more timid, like, hey, like, let's slow down. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. And then we have like the really amazing security people who, if you've heard Pascal Finette speak, right, the other side of AI, which is how do you use it in a way that protects your client data, your personnel data, like all the things that we own as professionals in the accounting and finance industries, like how do we make sure that that's protected? And AI feels so open, right? Considering it started with open AI. Just the name, right, makes you kind of nervous. So I think it's all the feels. We have, and it might be that all the feels in a single person. I have days where I'm like, whoa, stop the truck. We can't do anything. We got to hold on. We don't have this figured out. And there's other days where I'm, what are we going to work on? Let's just go in there, go in the sandbox. Let's get crazy. Let's do big things. And then there's other days where I'm like, have we thought this through? Are we, So I think it's okay, but everyone's all over the place.
So you brought up a very important part about data integrity. Do you approach each new opportunity with AI first at the data level or at the use case level, or how are you approaching this?
So it's both. I will say that just from an AI strategy as a firm, our very first thing, so we've built, right? We have some things that we're using, and our very first thing was security. So our team basically said, how could we do this and not be on the internet or not be in OpenAI, but how can we leverage that platform? And so, for those of you that might not know, I'll try not to get too technical because that's not going to be hard. I'm not a technical person, but we live in our Azure environment. It's private, it's separate. So we have our own instance of ChatGPT essentially, and our team can work in there. And if they and put client data in there, it's completely on our network. It's secure, it's private, and so there is no exposure for risk. So that's become our sandbox. So we started with the security question because we thought, well, whatever use case we come up with, we can't really play with it if we don't feel secure that if we oopsed it or if something got out that we weren't safe. So that's really been the premise and the starting point. I do think there are some use cases like how to set your policy for your teams, right? That's kind of been out there in the world of how do we figure this out? And I think there you can have like some flexibility, right? If we're talking about somebody saying, how could I put together a PowerPoint to explain 1031 exchanges to clients? It's a broad, it's not, there's no client data, it's nothing. Not allowing them to use ChatGPT to help develop that hinders their efficiency. So how can we do both? How can we provide an opportunity for them to be in compliance with our policy and utilize this cool technology for stuff that isn't really client private? And so we're trying to kind of navigate that now. So I guess it's both, right? It can be both, business case or security.
Yeah, and I know we had your CIO, Mo, at our AI symposium, and he shared about BPM's tax research tool and what you guys had built out there. So it's more internal facing. Have you evaluated any systems that will be client facing?
Yeah. So our marketing team is right now working with Mo and his team to figure out how can we use Gen AI for our client experience on our website. So, I mean, simple things. And that's kind of been the fun thing with the use cases is that we've been trying to think like low-hanging fruit. Like what are things that are annoying, take a lot of repetition, it's hard to scale them, that would make our client experience better, and then how can we apply Gen AI? And so we're trying to figure out like how could we connect clients to our services? Like how cool would it be if we created this Gen AI bot that basically exists on our website and they could ask it questions and it actually helps them navigate like where to get information about that service or who to contact about that service. And so that would be client experience driven, which is a really cool, and that would be like Gen 1. And then the hope is that like Gen 2, we would get to the point where I think there's some technology already out there, but we talk about like the pizza tracking, right? The Papa John's pizza tracking or Domino's pizza tracking. And how can we do that for our clients? Like, wouldn't their experience be so much more interesting and dynamic if they could see where we are in the process? Gen AI would be a part of that, right? Like, it would have to be connected to our workflows and how we sign off on things and who's engaged and who's talked to the client. And it's really exciting to think through how that could impact our client experience.
Absolutely. And you brought up about, other technologies and you kind of going through the same type of process. This is just another type of emerging tech. So when you're implementing, what kind of change management, practices are you leveraging to ensure that it's successful, and or if something isn't working the way maybe you thought, you can back and readjust?
Yeah. So change management for us is actually a new journey. Like we've always, change management exists in the background and people do it kind of like unintentionally, and it kind of has its place. But now as a firm, we're actually starting to think through how do we build change management into the way we approach every big initiative, whether it's technology based or not. So we have a couple people who've actually gotten certified on one of the methodologies of change management. And so now we have a different thought process. AI is just the next thing that we can apply it to, but really trying to think through, we use something called ProSci, that's our methodology. So if you don't know anything about change management, go check them out, like it's great. But they have this great acronym that we use and it's ADCAR. So like the first thing we do is awareness. Like, are people aware of like why we would do something like this, or why does it matter? What's going to happen? Like what's coming? And the second is desire. And if we can nail those two things, the desire is what's in it for me. And when we do those two things really well, our adoption rates are higher, our engagement rates are higher, our feedback loops are more impactful, so the iterations that we deliver can be meaningful, so that when we're ready for full launch, we can actually have a full launch that's successful as opposed to a full launch that everyone hates, and then we're backtracking and trying to figure it out. So.
Not get too far down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think like that's where we see the vision of change management really having an impact for our organization is trying to build it into the framework of how we think about an initiative from the very beginning, instead of when something happens or changes, because that's how we historically been like, oh no, like now we have to manage this change because it came at us out of nowhere. Sure. Being more proactive with it, just gives us an opportunity to get people to feel really comfortable and ready. I mean, change is not going to stop, right? I think you've been in a million sessions where we've talked about the pace of change and what's coming at us. So having a structure around that to acknowledge change isn't going anywhere, but how great is it if you have a friend along the way that has like some strategies that are proven and you can feel supported and you're not by yourself and it doesn't feel like a smack in the face. Like, oh gosh.
Well, and I was thinking that's gotta take away or at least alleviate some of that anxiety you first talked about with the overwhelm. I mean, because things are changing so much and there's constantly so much to keep up with and it's moving so rapidly, whether you're looking at it from the consumer side or in your business. I got to think some of that gives a little bit of comfort to your teams.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the change management has like two components, right? There's the process part of change management of, like when things are changing, how are we making sure that we have those gaps filled and we have it figured out and we have a plan from A to B. But the bigger part, and where change usually implodes, is the people side. And trying to figure out like, how do we have those conversations so that when things shift or don't work or don't quite land the way we thought they would, instead of someone having that massive anxiety of, why did we do this? We're never doing it again. Cut out the program. Like, Gen AI is going to be the bane of all of us. It's going to take all of our jobs. Like, we don't get those responses anymore. Instead, we get like, well, what went wrong with that? Why didn't that feel the way we thought it was going to feel? It's such a better conversation to be having than like, I'm out. Yeah. I'm tapping out. We're not doing any more change.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're obviously, this is passion for you. I mean, it gets you excited. So what, looking forward in the next, I say it's difficult at this point because things are changing so fast to look out 3 to 5 years. So I'll ask you on a shorter term. In the near future of 12 to 18 months, what are you excited about?
I think I'm excited because we have the vendors, the tech side of the profession that serve us and help us do things more effectively. I'm really excited because I think they are incredibly open to how they can leverage machine learning and Gen AI and building that into the platforms. Because when they do that, it takes the scary off of the plate of the deliverers of client service. Because then we don't have to figure out the how. And us accountants, we want to know the how before we know the why. Like, we want the checklist and we want to be able to get through it. So what's really magical about that is having a partner in the vendor space that comes and says, we've kind of figured this out. We want to work with you to figure out if it's landing right. And if we both work together, we can get an iteration that really is going to change the way you do work and the experience your client has. And that to me is like, I have like the tingles, because I feel like we've gotten over the hump. I think 8 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, even OpenAI was pretty limited, right? Like you couldn't get an enterprise without a lot of money. You couldn't get an enterprise service. Yeah, like you just couldn't get access to do anything private, to sandbox, to build. That's completely shifted over the last 6 months. And so now we have vendors that are like, I have my own ChatGPT space and I'm creating and building, and they have their own large language learning models that are like doing all these things that they're building and creating that are not cost prohibitive anymore, which means that they can license them to us for use with our clients and the work that we do at a much more realistic and affordable way to get into the marketplace. And it's not us developing. And that to me is like, like it was sort of like an exclusive club, right? Like, I mean, you said you had Mo at the AI Symposium, like we're a larger firm. We have the benefit of having like a really amazing IT team that like played in the sandbox. Yep. But most firms either don't have that resource or don't have the resources to invest in that right now today. But they do for the software platforms that they need to do the work. And if they already see that running in the background, like, wow, you've just empowered them to leverage a new tech.
And the time, I mean, most are not, even if they're using low cost or no cost solutions, I mean, how much time do they have to invest in building out their own, right? So they are going to leverage and be enabled by these benefits through the solution providers, 100%. But it was funny when you were talking about, we got to know the how first. I'm also thinking in the back of my mind, and the ROI.
Yes, right. I mean, the financials are given.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
This is going to pay for itself. But, I mean, so the interesting piece of that too, like I think of Gen AI and I think about the change management and the opportunities, and NPEG just released their report about the pipeline. And so as a profession, we are all talking about the fact that like we don't have enough people to continue accelerating the growth of new services and new ways that we're making our clients' lives better. Gen AI is a pathway to help supplement all of those other ideas in the report. And I think that's so impactful for like organizations to start really looking at those opportunities and saying, it's painful and it takes time to create efficiencies, but the gains on the backside are exponential. So the ROI piece is like almost a given.
It's funny too when we talk about the capacity challenges that firms of all sizes are experiencing. And I was asked last week, well, what are the really progressive firms doing? Are they offshoring? Are they outsourcing? Are they using tech? And I'm like, all of the above,
Yes.
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 All of it,
Yes.
But so my final question to you would be, what advice do you have for others who are there? They get it. They're like, yes, we want to be able to leverage AI. We're sold. We see the benefit here. We understand there's risks. There's limitations, but they're more concerned of where do I even start and how do I get my teams on board? What advice would you give to those folks?
I mean, there's so many things, but I'll give you the advice of the things that we are trying to do as a firm so that we deliver better. So one of them is develop an AI committee, a group of people who are decision makers / influencers, but definitely make sure you have some decision makers on that team that can really talk about what the AI strategy and roadmap for your organization looks like. And that is hard because we're asking you to shift from the shiny new toy and how you want to just stick it in there and start working with it and really think through, like, what is AI for you as an organization? What opportunities does it create? And if you can identify what those opportunities and outcomes that are really, really important for you, it's a great first step of like making sure you don't get distracted by the shiny object, because AI, Gen AI, machine learning, deep learning, like there's going to be some stuff in the next 12 months that's going to blow people's minds. Like and it will be very hard to like not just shift and go do that thing. So I think doing that. And then the second thing is the change management piece. I mean, just taking the time to think through, what does this mean for our organization? What does it mean for our clients? What does it mean for our communities? And how are we going to make sure that everybody feels safe as we go through this journey? Because if you can create safety, you're good. Like your team will be able to handle anything if it's safe.
I love that. Great advice, Lindsay. Focus more on the why, less on the how at first. Get a good team together and definitely communicate.
Yeah.
Over communicate.
Annoyingly communicate. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kacee. Always a pleasure.